Hello, everyone. This is Ryan Maloney from the National Jazz Museum in Harlem. Thank you all for joining us for tonight's program. On behalf of Christian McBride, John Batiste, our artistic team, as well as our executive director, Tracy Hyder Suffern, we would just want to thank you all for tuning in tonight. If you're new to the museum, you can check us out on jmih.org. You can learn more about what we have going on at the museum. You can become a member, make a donation, and support ongoing programming there. Tonight's program is a continuation of our very um, uh, successful, very, if I may say so, successful and powerful series called Jazz and Social Justice, where we take a look at the intersections between jazz and various social justice issues that we're facing in our world. And we're going to get things started. I'm going to pass things off to our curator and host of this series, the journalist. You've read him in the Wall Street Journal and all the jazz magazines. Please welcome Mr. Larry Blumenfeld.
I'm Larry Blumenfeld. Thanks for joining us tonight for what I can't believe is volume 14 already of the Jazz and Social Justice series here at the National Jazz Museum in Harlem. I want to thank Ryan and Tracy and everyone at the museum for making all this possible and being very supportive for more than a decade now of the stuff that I do. And this one is, titled Who Owns This Culture? And really the idea and the impetus and the music comes from tenor saxophonist J.D. Allen, and you'll hear some music very soon. So really, in the old days, before life changed for us, you would maybe take the subway up to Harlem, being a stone's throw from important jazz sites like the former Minton's and other places. You would come into the museum and you'd walk past the white baby grand that was in Ellington's home once, and you'd be sitting with, we'd have an audience of a diverse audience, including some Harlem residents, including some students, including some musicians and other kinds of artists, and just people who relate to something that we call jazz culture. These days, we're coming at you through this virtual community, as we've all gotten used to. So I'm actually in Jacksonville, Florida, not my usual site. Ryan was coming to us from Brooklyn. JD will be coming to us from Cincinnati, and other places will be represented. But we're joined together by a bunch of ideas that suggest a legacy and a community and something we share. And this is, when we say who owns this culture, which we'll get into, we're talking about a legacy and an audience and what contributes to that: access to the music, how the story of the music is told, who tells it, how education and presentation make this story and this culture available. So J.D. Allen is a musician who I've been listening to for a very long time. He's a forceful presence both on and off the bandstand. He's originally from Detroit. I got to know him in New York City, where he spent a lot of time, beginning with a long apprenticeship with Betty Carter. Off the bandstand, he's been a force for collective organization and empowerment, and that's something we'll talk about. I'm very much looking forward to his next release, a solo saxophone recording that should come out this year. But he's created a real sense of community from the idea of a jazz trio. And I know in the Wall Street Journal, I wrote recently about his last out trio album, Toys Die Dreaming. And forgive me, I'll quote myself, I called him an essential voice on jazz's landscape for both his force and his restraint, as well as for the beauty of his tenor saxophone sound. And I talked about, how his expressions are thoughtfully calibrated, and they straddle this line between mainstream and avant-garde with rare elegance and confidence. So we're going to get to talking about all the things I mentioned, and I hope that at some point some of you can join in the conversation. And at some point, we will be joined by drummer and band leader Nasheed Waits, who will be joining us, I think, from Manhattan. But without further ado, coming to you on video from Cincinnati, it will be, and thanks to Camp Washington in Cincinnati, will be J.D. Allen and his trio with bassist Justin Dawson and drummer Cedric Easton. So back to you very soon. Let's enjoy the music. Before I get JD Allen in on this, again, I want to say, I started this series after the 2016 election. And it was a time when I realized when I was in marches that there were a lot of issues and we needed to drill down on specific issues. And I wanted to discuss them with great musicians in connection with their music. So we've talked about everything from immigration rights to environmentalism, to gender bias, to the incarceration state. And so tonight with JD, we've had some conversations about this. We wanted to talk about who gets access to whatever we call a jazz community. What makes up jazz community now? What and how has that changed in the past year due to the pandemic? So I want to welcome again JD. Can we see him? Can we get him here? JD? Oh, there you are, man. All right. Let's unmute you. Let's unmute you.
There we go. Can you
All
hear me
right.
now?
We can hear your voice
Hear me now? Can you hear
too.
me now? All right. I have to say one thing, Larry. Which I think is very fair. I had We Up Re Up, which our logo is on this. So an audio situation like this kind of messes with other people things that are going on. So I want to say that We Up Re Up has been kind enough to make this particular performance free. So you can check it out on Facebook. We Up Re Up is probably posting it now. So after this conversation,
Cool.
you can go back and listen to this. And we do appreciate if you will show this video much later on your wonderful platform. But you missed a good show. Boom, bye, bye. I had fun doing it, but you can see it on We Up Re Up or Patreon. We Up Re Up, all that. So that's the commercial to that.
Yeah,
I
well,
just wanted
that's
to jump on that opportunity. You know what I mean?
that's a good point of entry. And yeah,
Oh yeah.
we've never had this problem before, but we had this
Okay.
problem, and we will make the music available. And for those of you who stuck with us, we can talk. So yeah, I mean, I know that a while, not that long ago, you started a nonprofit called We Insist.
Yes.
Of course, has resonances of many things, including Max Roach. And on that, I encourage people to go to the weinsist.org website, and there's a strong and long manifesto there.
Yeah.
Where you talk about the story of jazz as a pursuit of Black liberation, and that liberation can only happen through dismantling of racism and patriarchy. And also you talk about jazz as an intrinsically collaborative revolutionary act. But then you go on in that manifesto to talk about that there have been forces and reasons why maybe we haven't honored that collaborative, revolutionary, liberating motive, or maybe we've even hidden it. So what caused you to take that action and collaborate in this way and start that organization? And then we'll get to the new sister organization, We Up, Re-Up. But what was your motivation, and how did you want to address that issue through action?
Well, I mean, first let me say that it wasn't just me. It
Right.
was a wonderful saxophonist by the name of Jacob Duncan and Alita Brown, along with Nasheed Waits and Eric Reeves. So it was an egalitarian effort. And Jacob Duncan was great, kind enough to nail it out, all of our thoughts and what we thought would make for a better situation. It was it's simply just addressing the access issue we talked about earlier, Larry, in terms of inner city children and rural American children having access to the arts, basically. So that was kind of saying this is what we believe to make that would help make institutions run fairly and better. And so it was just a list of points made that we thought could help. Now, we had conversations with different schools that I won't name, which led us to believe that having a grassroots organization would probably serve everyone needs faster than just going, we still want to work with institutions, but it takes a grassroots effort along with working with institutions also. So
Right.
that started the creation of We Up, Re-Up, which is actually as you said, mentioned earlier, is actually the sister organization to We Insist. So they coincide together as one.
So now, what do you hope, or what does the group hope to achieve with We Up, Re-Up?
Well, we will achieve an organization of where individual musicians around the globe, actually, this is actually a global effort, within their communities would basically essentially become curators within their communities. And that would help us get into the communities that we live in and that we come from and become a communal effort involving music, a place to gather in non-traditional performance spaces and essentially bringing back the mentor situation that I grew up on with the
Right.
music. So, along with going to school, I think it's important that mentorship is brought back into play in the jazz situation now. So that's basically what we're doing in a
So
nutshell.
maybe let's we see his name here, but let's get Nasheed in the picture here, literally, and in the conversation. Can we bring Nasheed in? And hey,
Hello.
you're coming to us from where? Manhattan?
Yes.
Okay. So yeah, Nasheed, you, well, maybe could you talk a little bit about how you first got connected to what we would call a jazz culture and a jazz community, which I imagine first and foremost came via your father, the
Yes.
drummer Fred.
You have guessed right. That's it. That was my first source of exposure into the community at large, and it continues to this day. I've been fortunate in that regard that my father, in case for those who don't know, is Frederick Waits, Freddie Waits,
Great
Daoud.
drummer and percussionist.
Yeah, who worked with everybody from Memphis Slim and Percy Mayfield to Martha Reeves and the Vandellas and Little Stevie Wonder, Marvin Gaye to Lee Morgan and Boom and Max Roach and Sonny Rollins, so and Ella Fitzgerald. So I mean his musical world was wide and vast, and that was my initiation into the music. I mean, I grew up with it. Ever since I can remember, he was involved in the music, and since he was involved, we were involved.
Right.
so so that's my introduction, and I've been I chose that path after he passed away, and I continue to be an active participant.
Now, it's funny, as I've talked to musicians through the years, I can remember talking to great pianist Randy Weston, and he would tell me about, I'm from Brooklyn, but he would tell me about a Brooklyn where shoeshine guys were whistling Charlie Parker riffs, and you could hear Body and Soul like playing at a storefronts, and where Max Roach and many other jazz greats were just there to, to hang with. And that, and what he meant was, you didn't have to seek this out. It was there and it was inviting you, even if you did not have means, and even if you weren't crossing the river. And I bring that up because, you know, your father, Nashi, grew up in a certain context. Was it, if you didn't have that special access that you had to your father, to Max, do you think there it would have been as easy, or do you think it would have been hard for you to connect the culture and the music that now has defined a lot of your life?
It wouldn't have been as hard for me as it will be for my son,
Right.
because this was like before, like right before, and I saw I have a younger brother who's 10 years my junior, and he was in my same junior high school band as me. When I went to junior high school, the bands used to travel to different schools and they were playing all kinds of music. They were proficient on their instruments. Now, granted, all these people didn't become professional musicians, but they could play then. The instruments were being taught in the
Right.
schools, in
Yes.
the public school system in New York City.
Mhm.
By the time my brother went to the same junior high school 10 years later, they had the same instruments that needed repairs back when we were in there. So I mean, it wasn't a very encouraging situation in terms of providing them access even the ability to be able to play the
Mhm.
music. You know, they taught recorder in school, you know, and like,
Right.
so you just had to be at least familiar with the music.
Yeah.
Now it doesn't seem like they have that opportunity now, and I'm just talking about with music in general, not any particular type or anything like that. It wasn't like Duke Ellington. I mean, I never heard the word Duke Ellington in any of my in any of my classes. I never heard the word, you know, Louis Armstrong. I never heard the word John Coltrane or anything like that, or
Mhm.
Mary Lou Williams, for that matter, in any of my classes. That came from home. So I was fortunate in that regard. You know, my father and my mother, you know, have reinforced that the importance of these people with regards to me and my presence um,
Yeah.
as a young Black boy living in New York City. So yeah, I was fortunate. And as you grow up, you realize that it's the accessibility is reduced. You don't really see it being accessible to people who are not in a certain social economic bracket, meaning like they who can afford to have private music lessons and music lessons outside of their um, education.
Yeah.
That's a money thing. That as far as
Yeah.
I'm concerned.
Agreed.
Yeah. I mean, I'm a product of the New York City public school too, and public school system too. And yeah, we got, you know, even though no one taught me Ellington, no one taught me about Mary Lou Williams, no one taught me about John Coltrane, but I could play trumpet in a concert band, in a state
Precisely.
band. When I got to high school, I could hear a Caribbean band playing
Mhm.
steel drums, and the musicianship that they taught me would lead X amount of people to those things.
Right.
Or it's just that one hip teacher. But yeah, I mean, there's many other aspects that I know we want to talk about, but JD, a big piece of what your organization collectively is trying to do and what we're talking about is education, isn't it?
Hmm. Yes, it is, and I think the music is to echo what Nasheed is saying. Uh, it is thriving, but it's thriving in the suburbs of America, and
Mhm.
that's no fault of their own. I mean, it's PTAs. I mean, we all have children. You know, we understand that education is something in this country that you got to fight for. You know, so there is a segment of America that has an advantage in terms of education. So the arts are readily available to them because money comes to their community. I'm not faulting the kids or the parents for that. That's the way it is. But we see a need for us to once again deal with the grassroots element of it and not wait for someone to give us anything. So when you say trying, I mean, I have to always reinforce that by saying doing.
Yeah, I
What,
like
what we're going to do, we're going to go into these communities and we're going to be a part of that and essentially bring a mentorship to each community that we come from. Now, that doesn't mean that I mean, it's great. You learn about Duke Ellington, John Coltrane, Miles Davis, it's beautiful. But if you don't learn that, that's okay because it's not just the culture is bigger than just
right.
swinging. It's just one aspect of it, but just the ability and for kids to play instruments and hopefully rewire their brains like it happened for me. So that's what it is.
Right. I mean, I know I may have introduced JD properly. I didn't introduce Nasheed quite properly, but in your, JD, in your travels musically, and Nasheed, in your travels, whether it be the collective Tar Baby, whether it be your own bands, whether it be that long-standing relationship that you've had in Jason Moran's Bandwagon, which I think that band really has redefined a certain rhythmic identity. But as you two have, you've now achieved a level where you can go into a community and affect the kind of change that you're talking about, or make the kind of, but how do you do that? Or how, I guess I'm asking either what are the impediments to doing that, or what are the opportunities to do that?
Mm. I don't want to be greedy. You want to speak, take your turn, that sheet? Or...
No, you're not being greedy, brother.
All right, all right.
I mean, I feel like it's the first we're taking the first steps. The first steps are acknowledging that problem exists. I know that let me just use myself as an example. I know that I've been touring the world for the last almost 30 years. And that has taken me majorly outside of the United States. So you see an appreciation for the music, and almost in response to what you were talking about, Randy Weston hearing, Body and Soul, coming out the the stationery store or whatever, the grocery store, like that still exists in other countries. You know what I'm saying?
Right.
You could go to Japan and hear like some slick Cannonball Adderley, like at the Mossberg, at the McDonald's. I mean, in the department store, when you're walking to department stores in different countries, you hear this great music playing, and so it's seeping into, and it's a part of their culture now. Our I'll say America has almost extracted it out of the majority of the community. It's only accessible in those factions that have wealth and that have money. So it's like an esoteric type thing. It's like you have to pay to play, and so we're trying to, what we're going to do to not use that word try is engagement, community engagement on a grassroots level with people. So like JD was saying, so it's like the apprenticeship aspect, even on the performance level, is almost it non-existent. It almost doesn't exist, because there's in order to be able to have a band, you have to have work. Right? And the people that are our age and a little bit older, it's like they've been the frequency for them to be able to lead the band is reduced, right? So that aspect of the apprenticeship is lost. And we want to be able to encourage and to re-engage with the community from which we came in. One of the initiatives is to bring the music back, or to make a connection with the people in the southern parts of the United States. I've done one tour of the South during my whole career, and that was like in '98 with Jackie McLean. So it's been over 20 years since I did a tour of the southern part of the United States. I've done tours of the hinterlands in Germany for the last 25 years. You understand what I'm saying? So, I mean, we need to be able to address that, but to address that, we just have to be there. We have to make some outreach. We're making some outreach into these communities. That's the plan. That is the strategy. And it's not just going to be us. It's going to be the brothers and sisters from South Africa. It's going to be the people from the UK, from Canada. That's why we're forming all this coalition, so that we'll have so the understanding is that this is a universal concept. It's not just me from New York coming down to wherever, Mississippi. It's like all of us coming together, and hopefully that will resonate throughout the universe, really.
Yeah, that point you made about the South, that hit me hard, because I've been surprised. I've had conversations with musicians from the South, like Wadada Leo Smith or Charles Lloyd, and yeah, they will bemoan, unless a well-endowed arts center will bring them in at a university, they are not performing within hundreds of miles of where they were from, although they tour very well. And one thing that sometimes I read and hear about, as we all do, about jazz's past. And I'm like, you mean Ornette was there for a month? You mean Coltrane was there for 3 weeks? And I've talked to some musicians about just the idea of so much of what you're talking about could happen if you're just in a place longer, right?
Right.
If you're just in what we now call a residency, I guess. But
Right. Right.
you know,
I think that's the focus that I don't know if JD touched on this as well, as like we're not just trying to go through, breeze through, do the gig and leave. We're trying to have an elongated relationship with the people in these different places, in the community centers and the universities, whoever we can form a connection with, and whoever is receptive to trying to repair these bridges, because all of my people came from the South. All of our people came from the South. You know, it's like the great migration of what in search of, you know, I guess of more opportunities. But the roots are there in the music. The roots are from, at least from our American experience, or for the majority of Black people find their roots in the South. And you know, as far as but in this country, I mean, the appreciation for this music is it's low in comparison to everywhere else in the world, and that's not a mistake, that it finds its home and its origins in the Black American experience. So it's no wonder that it's not recognized for what it is, because because of the society that we live in, doesn't appreciate the contributions from our side of the tracks.
JD,
In any sense, not only music. I mean, we could be talking about anything.
JD, do you feel like a lot of what you're talking about could be accomplished if you just were somewhere longer? That it would naturally, organically happen, or you would find a way to do it? I mean,
What do you mean? I just want to understand. What do you mean somewhere long? Like if we played somewhere and we
Yeah,
just
if you were not just hitting in a place and leaving. If you were, you know, if you're in the city, or
no, I don't think that would happen. I think what we are doing, and it's not something new. It's just, as I told you earlier, it's just our turn.
right,
And the fact that COVID-19 has put everything into focus, and it has actually, I mean, I don't want anyone to get sick or family loss. I'm not happy about that. But the world is slowed down just a bit to
right,
catch people to sit down and say, well, what's going on and what's going to happen? You
right,
know, I have to mention, and we cannot pretend like we're sitting here in this box right now talking. The black and brown communities are hit the hardest. You
yes,
know, I'm a black musician. Nashida's a black musician. You know, so it's our community that's hit. One of our communities is hit the hardest. I mean, for various reasons. You know, we can go on. That's another conversation. But so that being said, is this situation, the shared reality that we're in, has put everything into focus. And I believe, along with the rest of us, that this is going to be it's going to be a different world. And if we don't work together and figure out how to approach this different world and help each other, then we're going to find ourselves just waiting for someone to do something for us. Which is, it's not that we don't want help; it's just that we're being proactive about what we
right,
should do. So it's not about if we were somewhere longer, because that world is over. We're not going to see that world ever again. You know, just like in the 1918 Spanish flu. I mean, I think it was after World War One, and it was a different world. So this is where we're at now, and I think quite a few of us realize that and see the need to be proactive about how we want to see the space is taken care of and where we want to see our energies put and the good that we need to put into these communities. So it's just being proactive. So it's another, that's a whole nother world you're talking about. Yeah, I would love to hang out somewhere for 3 weeks, play the gig and develop a relationship within the community, but that's never going to happen again. Not for a while, you know. So this is what needs to be done, and we're just being proactive about it, you know.
So what would make, you know, I understand the idea, I understand very deeply the idea of you're not waiting for someone to do something or give you something, and that,
Well, don't get it wrong. I don't mind someone
right,
giving us
right,
something.
right, No, but
I
I
want
mean,
to be like,
right.
don't send nothing this way.
I
You
know you're
know.
talking about two things. I think you're talking about two things: structural change and also, you know, artists themselves
Mhm.
seizing the initiative and the direction and how things are framed and done. But what would make, wherever you're performing or going, what would make for the right collaborators, be it at a school, that in a community, from a local government, from an arts organization? What would make them the kind of collaborators that would serve this mission?
That's a good question. Um, well, I mean, personally, and I'm just speaking for myself. I've and I have to dip back into 2020 a bit. And it's no knock against anyone I've talked. I appreciate everyone who's picked up the phone all over this world.
Hmm.
Thank you. And the people that couldn't come back or didn't see the need to come back or just watching on the side, I get it. But I think for me, speaking for JD, is that a good collaborator is someone who doesn't have the blinds on. You know, I'm not here, and I say this respectfully, and I'm speaking for myself. I am not here to make somebody feel good about themselves or
Hmm.
understand. I think after a certain while, when you get to I mean, a child is one thing, but as an adult, you know right and wrong. And I'm not asking to like me or anything or like jazz. So that's not my mission. If your blinders aren't on, then be a part of us. Join us. That has no color because you say, whose culture is this?
Right.
Um, we're in Black History Month. I mean, America is Black history. There's no way to look at this thing outside of the lens of race. So
Right.
usually, someone that's dealing with us or picks up the phone with me and calls back a second and third time, white, green, black, or blue, they do not have their blinders on. It is a very open conversation, a frank conversation, and it's about finding the solutions that we can do. It's not about being an activist, it's about being a good neighbor, a good citizen. So that's what we look for. That
Right.
institution, person, or someone who's just a listener and wants to get involved.
Right.
That's how I look at
Right. And there are, I mean, I've found, back to sort of the idea of education, I've found, it's one thing to say, oh, do you know about jazz? Do you know
it. Mhm,
jazz history? Are you told, should we teach this thing called jazz? But
mhm.
I find, in the world that you guys walk and play in, and that so many creative musicians, men and women from all over walk and play in, that there's other kinds of I find there's a profound illiteracy and a willful ignorance of certain things that aren't necessarily just jazz, like what improvisation actually is,
Mm,
what improvisers actually do, as opposed to just playing what they feel, and how that relates to the idea of composition. Or, like you were saying, this history of, hey, we're not going to choose to talk about race when we talk about jazz. We're going to acknowledge that the body of this culture and this country is dealing with this. It's inescapable and runs. I mean, I find that, those things, more than teaching jazz history, getting people to understand those realities. Over
mm.
the years, I've been lucky enough to learn those things from you and so many other musicians.
Oh,
I feel like you can talk about those things without even worrying about the word jazz.
well, and not to jump in front of Brother Nasheed here, I just want to say something. And a good friend of mine and mentor of mine, Mr. Branford Marcellus, was kind enough to talk. I talk to him at least once a year to get a tune up. That's my man. But he kind of hit me to something a few years ago. And when I looked at it like this, the world of music became inclusive. It wasn't just about jazz.
Right.
And it gave me the right to say culture. And I'm gonna tell you this: that jazz is not improvising. See,
Right.
there's improvisation all over this world.
Right. Yeah.
Most communities, as you know, have an improvising element to it.
Yeah.
What it is swinging. And when you say the word swinging,
Right.
sometimes our newer, younger brothers and sisters, they or well, however they want to be addressed, think that we're talking about, you know, what the fuck on a cymbal. But swinging is phrasing. So when I
Right.
look at it like that, then I can see the thread of American culture. I can see how,
Right.
Louis Armstrong influenced everybody from,
Hmm.
Billie Holiday onto The Weeknd, just by phrasing. You know what I mean? So when you look at it like that, then you understand, at least I understand what the culture is. So improvising, that's all over the world because
Well,
when you just bank on that, a lot
yeah,
of other elements come in and kind of take
yeah.
away
No, no,
what
no.
the
That
meaning is.
I'm bringing that up as one aspect, which is
True.
just as true. That dynamic is just as true in the real history of what we call classical music. And
Hmm.
we look at, so I'm not, I'm talking about that's one element, but yeah, well, you're also, there's that other aspect of, hey, you have to look at the entire history of this hemisphere as
Hmm.
connected and look at how all that, which we know how it got connected that way too. And, but I'm saying, I find that you and the musicians that came before you teach those things in a way, and teach those things that I was really denied in my education.
Okay.
Um, I did not, I did not learn a proper history of this hemisphere. I did not learn a proper understanding of, right, how you phrase something polyrhythmically with an
Hmm.
understanding of a polyrhythmic situation. You
Hmm.
know, um, is do you think that what we've lived through the past year has changed everything, and it's strangled everything, and it led to the tech problems we had tonight. But is this a chance? Some of the musicians I talked to early during this lockdown, maybe the trumpeter Ambrose Akinmusire and some other people, a lot of people were talking about maybe we have a chance for a reset.
Mm.
Do we have a chance for maybe a reset of, I'm not saying, ooh, now the government would fund culture, but maybe we have a reset in where we place culture in our spectrum of needs and how we live. Because maybe if we're reevaluating everything, I mean, I'm asking you because you're living the both financial and daily reality of a culture bearer.
Mhm.
Is this, Reed, do you think that we can hope that or try to make this a reset where these ideas of culture have maybe, I'm not necessarily more prominent, but have a different function in how we're working,
Mm.
how we're living?
I mean, I feel like this time, especially the last 4 years, is an eye opener in terms of where this nation state experiment is at, and it's not in good shape, to be quite honest. On the grand scale, of course, there are people, there are people, and there are forces out here that are working for good, but there is a lot of ignorance, and there's still a lot of hatred in this world, and there's still a lot of people who are not open to accepting the truth about their situation, to be quite honest. You know what I'm saying?
Mm.
So in order for them to even be receptive of somebody else's situation, they have to be able to realistically analyze where they're at.
Right.
And there's so much lies being fostered, and what I feel like the level of education is that's a problem. That's the problem in this country and whatnot, because everybody's I shouldn't say everybody, but there's a large amount of ignorance in terms of what's happening. What are the forces actually affecting you? So if you're talking about other people, those the majority of those people are wanting accepting somebody else's culture, I feel like that's a stretch, to be quite honest and whatnot. As much as I would love for that to be, I just feel like it's been you can see it. You can now. It's like the sheets have been pulled back. I
Mhm.
feel like that's what this last 4 years has taught us. It's like things weren't as sweet as we thought they were. I know for me, especially with the regardless of policy and all that, just the image of having a black president in the Oval Office was like something I never thought I would see
Right.
during my lifetime. But then that also created this other, Tea Party situation, all this other. It's like the that and the racism is always here, but that prejudice and that feeling like it came to the surface. even more than it was before, I believe, in every faction of society. So that's why you see everybody, all these organizations and so forth being called on that stuff, because it's something that is woven into the fabric of America. Is the fact that Black folks did a lot of work and they were not accredited for that work, and still have not been paid for it in the sense that how you pay for something that you do. You know what I'm saying? That you do a service and then you get paid for it. The Black folks have done services for over 400 years in this country and have not been adequately paid for that. There have been a few folks who have gotten a little something, but the majority of folks have not seen that money. If you want to put it in the sense of economics, you know what I'm saying? They have not seen. It's not been. It has not been an equitable situation for those who have contributed to what they've gotten. So, I mean, and that's just, that's not a cultural phenomenon exclusively. That represents every aspect of society: economic, social, spiritual. The America is not evolved into that place. It's been so. I feel like the idea of America, the white picket fence and everybody being able to, like the after World War II situation that was so lovely and glorious for everybody, but it was like that little small period of time in American history. You talk about everything else, and it was like the majority of the people in the struggle, and a few people succeeding. It's like it's basically that. It's almost like that. This type of society is the same type of society that they had in Rome, that they had in Greece, that they had in Egypt. I mean, these great societies, but they didn't last. And you want to know why? Because of the inequity of the power. It doesn't work. This type of thing doesn't work. When the few people have the accumulation of wealth that are dictating to the other people what they can and cannot do. That template is a recipe for it's not a recipe for success. It's a recipe for disaster.
Agreed.
Yeah, I mean, I know that I'm certainly not naive or Pollyannish about, what culture can do, what the music we're talking about can do. Yet, I do know that, we've had a lot of stark, harsh truths along the lines you're talking about, Nasheed, really come to our living rooms and to our consciousness. Now, what people do with that is another story. But I know that if I turn on any cable show where people are in boxes like we are, that's not helping this situation. No. That's just a lot of shouting. And for all the value of social media, hey, we're coming to you, sometimes with tech glitches, live Facebook.
All the it's all right, which is corrected because we up is sharing it now. No worries on that.
That's right.
I just want to make sure it doesn't reflect our brand,
No.
Got on that,
And so where should people go to online? Just since
there's a Facebook page, we up Facebook page, and on Instagram. But I just want to add something real quick to that, because I think this is probably, for me, this is one of the meat and potato points right now. I think this is a tough conversation that we all need to have. On your end, from my opinion, I don't know your world. I see your world. I've seen it all my life. I know it, but maybe that's a conversation for whoever's watching at that Thanksgiving table when they get together these holidays and they have an uncle or an aunt. You need to have those conversations and preach to that choir. I think what we're doing, and our strength is, re-up, is that we're reaching outside of just America, and we're inviting the African diaspora to be a part as a unit together. So it's not just in New York or LA or just inner city situations. This is happening all over. And unfortunately, I hate to say this, I have to thank COVID for making me stop smoking cigarettes. And I have to thank COVID for making friends all around this beautiful world who have some of the same problems that I didn't know went on there and there and there. But we've been able to talk to each other and come to an agreement to help each other. So that's our, in my opinion, that's our conversation, what we got to do. We can't wait. We have to act. And if anyone wants to be a part of this situation, I do invite you to, write us at We Up Re Up if you feel you can help. If you want to be a part of it, or you just want to be cheers along. We welcome all who could be of service to us in this mission that we have. So that's what I wanted to say.
Right.
Everybody got to go home and talk to their people. So when we come together, everybody know their manners. It's as simple as that, you know?
Yeah, I mean, that's actually exactly the way I tend to talk about these things and all these volumes of this that I've done, which is it's really just meant as like set off some ripples. Now you
Yeah.
Right.
go
Oh,
wherever
I
you're
appreciate
going
it.
and you
Yeah.
take whatever piece you're taking, but
Yeah.
take it in a certain spirit. But where I was headed before and talking about, okay, you've got social media is for all its benefits is not answering the need that Nasheed, the problem that you were pointing out. Um, um, Argumentative cable talk shows are not answering that need. And I'm not naive, but I do think just because I've had the benefit of getting a 30-year education through, not just masters and practitioners of jazz, but a wide range of culture that is in the area of where we're talking about. And yes, it spills all over the world. And
Yeah.
Randy may take me to certain parts of Africa, and I may end up. Jen Shu may take me to certain parts of Asia, and um, you know, guys I know, musicians I know in New Orleans will take me to parts of New Orleans that I did not know existed, and Yosvani Terry will show me how it happened in
Right.
Cuba for his, and on and on and on.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
Right.
But that there is, I've had the benefit, there's this rich story that, and this rich, the very compassion, empathy, understanding of stark truths about race and violence and
Mhm.
denial of rights and riches and what's due. That story is, I feel like you can get that distilled much more purely through the education that you get in the kind of culture that you guys practice and that you're connected to. That maybe, I mean, one musician, this was a Middle Eastern musician, and this had more to do with um, issues around Palestinians and Israelis and others. But I remember a musician telling me like 20 years ago, all right, we really are reaching you at a place that CNN can't touch. That's before CNN gets you, before Fox gets you. And I don't mean that as like, oh, music is so deep, it'll make you deep. But I mean it as literally, don't, I feel like, is there at a certain level, aren't you conveying, I mean, I know Nasheed, the work that you do with Jason's trio, there's so many levels of talking about place and space and how you're going to present the music. Isn't there a political message in there that maybe serves this moment?
Yeah. I mean, there's a message of inclusion with everybody. You know what I'm saying? Everybody has a story to tell, and there's value in everybody's story and everybody's narrative. That's the beauty about this music, is that you don't, even though it has its roots in the Black American experience, you don't have to be a Black American to play it. If you can play the music, you can play. It doesn't matter where you're from. I mean, that's been proven by, and by so many folks right now. Some of the people that you see or whatnot that are, the quote unquote jazz musicians that are receiving accolades, and deservedly so, and one I do not necessarily uh, find their birthplace here in America. That is a representation of the universal nature of this music, and the quality is that it is inclusive in the sense that it's really about the music, which doesn't have a color or doesn't have a sex. It's that comes out of you as a spiritual being. So it's really about, you find yourself in a bandstand with all different types of people from all different types of places. So you find yourself communicating with these people. The music is really, even though we're using the drums or the horn or whatever, we're having conversations with each other through the
Right.
music. And then also when we come off the bandstand, we're traveling with everybody. And so we have an opportunity to interact and engage with each other about everything. We're sharing meals. This is the same type of experiences that, I was watching something about Billie Holiday and different people experience when she was traveling with the Benny Goodman band. I mean, they had the same experiences. So the members of that band had an opportunity to see, wow, she can't eat in the same place that we ate. We just got off the bandstand. We did everything else together. How come she's not afforded this opportunity that I'm afforded? This same type of dynamic is reflected today, in terms of, whatever it is, your voting rights, or your place in society. Oh, this person is talking about buying some property and such and such and such and such, yet they do the same thing as me. Oh, there's a talk about generational wealth. Why am I so exactly? Why am I? My parents were like, they kind of had a regular job, but this person's parents had a regular job, but yet they can afford to buy some property. They can afford to get. They're talking about 401ks and things like that, and the other person is talking about paying his back rent. Why is that? Same talent level. So then you can start discussing these issues, and then we can try to remedy them. It's like it always starts with the smallest conversation with somebody that you know. It's like, I feel like that's the thing about this music that's so beautiful, is that you find yourself in positions with people that you may not have come across with had you just lived, your life in the city and doing a certain job and not gone anywhere to engage with these people from these different cultures, these different and these different places. And so it's really like the music, or the education through the music, is really just an opportunity to look inward, and to also look and to also reflect on the society that you're in, and also encourage you to talk with some of the people that you might not necessarily engage with, people that you wouldn't necessarily have that engagement with.
And I just want to add something also, because I don't want to pretend like, we're sitting on a high perch looking down and, hey, you got to do this, you got to do this, you got to do. I mean, within our community too, there are issues in terms of equity and things like that. Dealing with our sisters who are a part of this music, or people who choose to call them however they want to be presented. Those issues do exist. So I don't want to sit here and pretend like that doesn't go on, because I was fortunate enough to learn a lot of things that I didn't understand myself. So there are things that we need to work on in terms of that. And shout out to Alexis, who was supposed to be here with us. I want to make sure to acknowledge that she couldn't be here. So if anyone was tuning in to see her.
Alexis Lombre.
Yeah, that's right.
Pianist. Yes, unfortunately, she could not be part of our conversation. But yeah, maybe could you reflect a little bit on that woman, Betty Carter, who
Betty Carter,
who was if you, even if you weren't a jazz fan, if you lived in the part of Brooklyn that I lived in when I lived in it, you were aware of this quasi-university that was Betty Carter's world. Mm-hmm. And that it had ripples of effect. What in terms of building culture, what did she teach you?
Well, I think personally, if you really paid attention, and it's a lot of us who are a part of that school, but what I got from it, if you really pay attention, this is what she trained us to do, Larry. This is right what we're doing.
That's what I think, yeah.
Okay, so like I met her through Marcus Belgrave, who was a mentor to a lot of people in Detroit.
Yep.
You could not leave Detroit, at least in my opinion, unless you dealt with Mr. Belgrave. Mm-hmm. So that kind of, she came to a performance we were at, and we were playing with Mr. Belgrave, and there was Betty Carter, and I think he hooked it up so Kareem Riggins could meet her. But so when I finally got into that universe, she was a leader, I mean, plain and simple. She ran the show, man. There was no question about it. She commanded respect, and if you didn't get it, you were out of there, and it wasn't. I think this is what we were trained to do. We were trained to keep it. I remember. I got a good story for you. When Dolly was cloned, I was in the airport with Miss Carter, and I said, "What do you think about that Dolly sheep that was cloned? What's your opinion about it?" She said, "I wish that someone can clone me so I could just keep on swinging." And she meant that, man. She looked me right in the eye and said, "You keep on swinging." Now, keep on swinging can mean a lot of things. It can mean the music thing, or it can mean that thing, never giving up. Keep on swinging. You dig what I'm saying? So how can I speak on Miss Carter? Is like, well, what we're doing is a part of that in some way, reaching out to youth, uh, getting past ageism, dealing with equity, making people a part of something, especially during this time when you need to call somebody and say, hey man, let's make a plan. We don't see it, but let's make a plan and hook or crook, we gonna do this. That's what I got from Miss Carter. She was gonna do it, man. She was not gonna wait for anybody. It was going to get done.
Yeah.
So that's the best way I could describe what I got from. I mean, of course, it's musical things, but obviously, due to the glitch in on your fault, it's not about the music and should be more about what we're talking about. So that's what I got from her. Keep on
You
Um,
know,
swinging.
I
I
have a
never. I'm
question.
sorry. I'm just going to interject
Go ahead.
before you move on from Miss Carter and what she gave to the community. I never worked with her, but I'll share a small story and then segue into what I gleaned from her contribution to the community. And to sum it up in a nutshell, it was like man up. That was her. That was her. That was her. Don't she was a woman, but she was a woman who really exuded strength and independence
True.
and taking the bull by the horns. Don't talk about it, do it.
Do
Right.
it.
I
Yeah.
had a my father passed away in '89, and we had a benefit concert at Henry Street Settlement that was organized by Paul West,
Hmm.
and she closed out the concert.
Yeah.
And backstage, I was thanking her. Oh, Miss Carter, thank you so much for being a part of this. And she didn't give me the type of response I was thinking. Like I was expecting, like, oh, baby, it's gonna be okay. You're gonna be all right. Just hang in there. She looked me up and down, and she didn't say a word.
Woo. Hey, that's her.
She took a couple of paces back and looked me up and down and was smirking, like, okay, now what you got now?
Right.
You 19-year-old man and whatnot. You got a younger brother, 10 years your
Right.
junior and whatnot. You out here living in this cruel and harsh world. What are you gonna do? Are
Yeah.
you gonna represent? Are you gonna fold? You better
Right.
represent because I'm here because of the man your father was. Now, what
Woo.
man are you gonna be? I mean, that was the message I gleaned from
Right.
that stare
Yeah.
down.
Right.
You know what I'm saying? And
Right.
I know from conversations that he had with other young musicians that they're looking for that same type of motherly love. And she gives you the motherly love, but she gives you that tough love.
Yeah.
Right.
And I feel like that is the type of apprenticeship that we all were blessed to receive, and that a lot of younger people aren't receiving. So, regardless if it's the music that you're talking about, if it's the culture you're talking about, whatever, I feel like we need to be able to have those type of real conversations with ourselves in order to be able to better the situation we're in. Like, there's everybody's. I was watching some Patrice O'Neill the other day, and he was like, "A little racism is okay." I can deal with a little bit of racism because we all have it. Let's be realistic. We're not living in a perfect world. We all have formulated these opinions about ourselves and about other people and whatnot that might not necessarily be rooted in the truth, but could also be rooted in the truth. Some of these
Yeah. Yeah.
stereotypes actually applicable, and that's what makes us human, and that's what makes us part of these communities. And there's no real, and you can't take offense to everything because you'd be walking around here upset all the time.
Right.
You'd be walking around bitter and upset all the time and trying to tell somebody how they need to address you. I understand when it's extreme. Yes, we need to really start embracing our differences, really,
Right.
because we're all different. Don't everybody have the same opinion. We need to be able to have an opinion and have a different opinion, but still respect the other person's opinion and be able to come together to work together. That's what's
And
amazing
also,
about this music.
and
It
also
teaches you that.
embracing the better part of your individuality. Like
Precisely.
I remember talking to Cassandra Wilson many, many years ago, and she talked about she sought out Betty Carter in the green room after performance. She was coming to Betty. She was at the feet of them, and she said, "I want to be the next Betty Carter." And she's like, "Immediately, So Betty Carter was like, "First of all, there isn't going to be another Betty Carter. Like I'm Betty Carter, but then also you don't you dare want to be the next Betty Carter." And, the way Cassandra Wilson told it, that's what helped set her off on a very, for its day, original path as a singer. So I have a question that's sort of, it's not unrelated to everything we've been talking about, but, we talk about who owns this culture or how it gets represented or framed. Hey, I've been working for decades in, trying to help continue to tell the story of this culture. But I'm very aware of all the contexts of its telling through the decades. Do you feel like the story of, if not jazz, this culture and jazz has been adequately or fairly told or needs to be reframed?
Wow. Okay. I mean, I guess a rock and roll musician would ask that. Who created rock and roll? Or I guess a blues musician would ask that. I mean, now you're getting into
Not who created,
titles, right?
not who created this.
Okay. Okay.
As we look at what the context and life of the culture that we're here talking about is.
Well, I mean, look, I could just be totally honest with you, and I think talking to you, I think you will appreciate that. I mean, I think America just needs to learn history. Period.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, pick up a book, Howard Zinn's, these people's, it's a good book. I mean, it's harsh, but it's the truth. I mean, if you know history or know something about it, then you would understand this. You wouldn't have to ask, was it properly framed? You would know exactly how it was framed and why. I mean, the Francis Bacon Rebellion, it was this thing going on and where people were together and then they had a way to, but you would understand racism if you just know a little bit of history and why racism exists. You know what I mean? So I think maybe the question is, are people learning history in this country?
Mm-hmm.
And it's evident that that's not happening because look at the last 4 years. I mean, information is just skewered in so many different
Right.
directions. So I say this: if you know history, if you take the time to pick up a book or look at something and value understanding where you are and what happened, then you wouldn't have to ask. Has the story been properly told? You would know exactly what happened. It has been changed for a reason. I mean, we know this, to a benefit, and that's just what it is. That's out of our control, but that's what it is. And you don't have to just start with jazz. You could just do it with history in general. Does that answer the question, or was that real nebulous?
No, not at
Reel it
all.
in if you want.
No, and I'm old enough and was fortunate
Yeah.
enough to have gone to Boston University when
Yeah, even
Howard
now
Zinn was teaching.
they're having like
So
the actual size of Africa on the map now. I mean, that's how you understand what I mean? What's going on? And it's like I'm not trying to get into conspiracy thing. It's not that. It's just hey, if you just pick up a book and read a little bit of history, you'll understand
no,
what's
I'm
going on.
paying,
I'm not saying you. I'm just saying the
well,
public needs to.
we're
You know,
I know you're saying the general you, but yeah, I had what was billed as a very good education,
yeah.
yet the entire continent of Africa was rarely talked about and only talked about as if it was one homogenous thing.
Yeah, I
So
mean nobody owns trouble. Everybody's had their turn. That's how I feel.
right.
Okay, we don't own it. Nobody owns it. I'm just saying, I'm me personally. I'm not gonna get into, this is my music and you got to acknowledge this to do it. No, I don't. I don't care. But I play music with my eyes closed. That's just how I roll. And if it's great, it's great. I don't. I'm not looking at now when you take the horn or drumstick out your mouth, what you're talking about, that's something different. That ain't got nothing to do with music. That's something totally different. But while playing this, I'm not trying to say, hey, I'm protein man. I created, that's not of an importance to me. What's important to me, Larry, is this that a kid who looks like me that grew up like I did in inner city Detroit, Michigan, or another kid who does it in rural America What's
Right.
important to me is that they have access to this music so they can have an outlet to express themselves and they can rewire their situation. I am living proof of that. And if
Yeah.
you ever meet somebody that knows me, they will tell you that this music helped me change a lot of the projection I was heading in. And I would like to share that. That's as simple as that.
Right.
You know, that's what it's about for me. So, you know, I'm down with the history. It's not important. I mean, we all know, we should know who created it. If you don't know, then you'll come up against that roadblock and you'll have to turn around if you really want to play this music and figure that out. But the most important thing right now is making sure the youth
Yeah.
get to this music. Poor people like tubas and trombones too. You know, that's all I'm saying.
Well, well, yes, and there's complicated. Well, there's
Truth
complicated
telling,
histories around.
truth telling, truth telling.
Poor people
Well,
like
Kelly,
saxophones too,
you know,
man.
also
Yeah,
when I
yeah.
say history, I'm not talking about, hey, who gets credit, who invents. I mean more so, hey, if I know that you create an organization called We Insist,
Hmm.
and someone has correctly written the history of who Max Roach was, why
Hmm.
he titled an album We Insist, what was going on at that time, what he was thinking about, why he got Abby Lincoln to scream against, she used to say, against her inclination and better judgment.
Hmm.
Um, what all that was, well, that actually, I mean, I feel like that actually contributes a lot, not just to how I understand Max Roach's music, but how I understand what's going on in 2021 in the United States.
Agreed.
Um,
Agreed.
that's, you know, to me, that's, but you know, Nashi, you said something very interesting, like, you know, 45 minutes ago about, about, okay, maybe there isn't a certain enthusiasm and market for jazz, like there may
Mm.
be in other places. But I find that I wonder if you find this too, when audiences and just human beings are presented with your music without buying a ticket to a jazz series and making a decision to sign up for jazz, when they hear your music and when they see how you work and the compassion you were talking about and the organic nature of the music, I feel like there is a lot of enthusiasm, or I find I've had the chance to do a certain amount of organizing and curating and putting things together. And I find that the further I get from a quote unquote jazz audience, the more enthusiastic and direct the connection is to what you guys do.
Yeah, I don't. Maybe I mischaracterized that because that wasn't my intent. I wasn't trying to
No, no,
insinuate that there were that a lot of people didn't wouldn't be attracted to the music. I was saying that it's not accessible to them, and it's not packaged like in that sexy package where the young people are going to be like, "Ooh, I want to play that music and whatnot." You know what I'm
right.
saying? It's not like that. You know, if they were exposed to it, of course. I remember my cousin, and he was like 10 or something, maybe 11 or 12, maybe a little older. And he came to stay with me. My nephew came to stay with me, and I was doing a gig with Peter Brotzman. Now, I don't know how many of y'all know who Peter Brotzman out there is, but he's a screamer with the saxophone. You know, I
Mm-hmm.
mean, he's a lot of other things, but I'm saying like an outward uh, description of what he does is like he's screaming through that horn, right? So it's a completely extemporaneous set. We're playing free the whole time. And I was like, man, I don't have anywhere you to go. You too young to stay here, so you're gonna have to come with me to the concert. And I was like, wow, he's gonna get a taste, right? So at the end of the concert, I was like, well, what are your impressions? He was like, man, I really liked it. He was like, man, when I saw him playing the horn, I thought he was gonna pass out. He was turning blue. I mean, you know, so I mean, like, and so I mean, like his concept, or and like, you know, you ask a lot of younger people what their concept of quote unquote jazz is, and they're like, oh, they have no connection to it. They don't know what it is, you know, and that's not necessarily important. But I'm just talking about the fact that you can play an instrument. You know what I'm saying? That concept is almost foreign to people who don't grow up in a situation where they can afford instruments and where music is taught.
Right.
Agreed.
So it has to be. We have to make that available. People who don't know anything about the music and or who are not exposed to it, when they hear it, they're like, "Oh man, I like that." There's actually something in there that I can roll with. But up until that point, their idea of it is something that they wouldn't pursue.
Mm-hmm.
You know what I mean? So we just have to at least put it out there because then it teaches you something about yourself. I mean, like you said, I mean, it's a very rich. It's and it is and it reflects the culture of America in the most accurate way, I would say. You know, in terms of, in order for it to achieve its greatness, there needs to be a collective. Everybody has to contribute it to it. It ain't just coming from one place. Everybody has to be included. The women, the men, everybody. You know, people from over here, people from over there. This person from this economic background. This person from this. Everybody has to contribute it for it to be as rich as it is. That's why it sounds like this. And that's why that's all music, all aspects of the culture. That's why the food tastes good like that, because you got little pieces of this from here, little pieces of this, little flavor from this from here. You got some cumin from over here. You got different spices in one that contribute to it to give it its amazing flavor. It's the same thing with the music and the culture. But if you don't have any exposure to it, you're not going to be able to reap the benefits and taste how good it tastes.
Right.
I just want to add one quick thing because I have to say this. During the We Insist the conversation last year, which is still a vibrant conversation that is going on now. We had meetings with a lot of people and Black teachers and professors in the academia world, and we asked them, in your opinion, what can we do to help young people get into these institutions where you teach? Now, I'm not gonna reveal who said what. I don't want to put anybody in jeopardy. I mean, I'm not beholden to anyone, so I could run my mouth a little more, you know. But the first thing, one of the most interesting things was they said, well, you know, you have to get to the children early, like third, fourth grade, kind of when I started, you know, and then by the time they get ready to go to college, then they're ready to pass these auditions and get in, you know. So then I said, okay, well, oh wow, it's a situation with elementary schools, you know. Now I was in one particular place where I called up a school. I said, look, I'm not saying I'm a good guy or angel or anything. I said, but look, you know, I'll give free music classes. You don't have to pay me. I want to just come in and do this. And they looked at me like I had five heads, you know. So it was the elementary programs we tried to go at and get into. So we needed to figure out the instrument thing. I went to an organization, I will not name them, that helps youth with instruments. And when I looked at what they had, right, they had the violins for different communities. They had for the Black community, they had DJ equipment. And then for the Hispanic community, that's where all the instruments were at, mariachi bands. You know, so I couldn't come to them saying, we need a saxophone or this, or can we partner up with you guys and start this thing where we want to go to communities and possibly give lessons and workshops and things like that. So it has to be a grassroots effort. You know what I mean? It cannot always be about sitting. I mean, I love to talk. I know it's important. I know people need to get an understanding. But after a while, you know, theory is just theory. You know what I mean? It's like there's application and then there's theory. I think we've done a lot of theory for a long time. You mentioned Mr. Roach, and of course he had his efforts, and you can go farther back with that, you know, but enough with the talking and let's do something. So that's what this organization is about, you know, being
I think
proactive and putting theory into practice.
that call to action is the perfect place well, we've unfortunately reached our witching hour. I do wanna say, first of all, thank you so much to
Thank
Jimmy
you.
Allen and Nashi Waits, two musicians I've listened to again and again and will listen
Thanks for having
to
us, Larry.
again,
Appreciate
and
it.
who I really enjoyed
Much
talking to.
appreciated.
I do want to acknowledge anyone who was here and stuck with us. And, you know, I know you came for the talk, but I know you came for the music. You did not get the music correctly.
Oh, well, you know, hey,
So please go to the Facebook page of We Up, Re-Up.
yeah.
You will hear JD and his trio in a Cincinnati art gallery, art
Culture
performing.
Park, Camp Washington. Yeah, that's it.
Thanks to Camp Washington.
Yeah.
We will make an effort to put that up at this
I
museum
appreciate
website
that.
too.
Thank you.
We'll be back at you another time. Thank you very much. And thanks, guys.
All right. Goodbye. Stay
Thanks for
safe and
having us.
healthy.
Good night, everyone.
Yes,
Thank
be
you.
well out there. Peace.